entitled twin who got my girlfriend pregnant, and entitled parents tried to get me to donate my kidney after they disowned me for being bi. I, Ryan, and my twin brother, Sebastian, have never even been close. In fact, he made life hell growing up, and my parents didn't help by playing favorites, getting him better stuff on our birthday, only going to see films he liked at the cinema, and giving him extra money for housework despite us doing the same amount of work. He would always put me down, belittle me, bully me with his friends at school, break my stuff, and then blame me, and was just a pain in general. Growing up, the only people I knew to rely on was my older sister Jane, my cousin Kai, and best friend Isaac, who all knew what an awful person my brother was. Anyway, cut to when I was 17 and I had my first girlfriend, someone I loved very much. We didn't have sex because she wanted to wait until her 18th birthday to lose her virginity, but it turns out that she was having an affair with my brother behind my back for half the time we were together, and only got caught when it was revealed she was pregnant. I was crushed. She knew how much I hated my brother, and she saw some of the awful things he did to me, but she still went and did that. Cheating is bad enough, but to do it with him of all people. I punched him in the face and broke his nose and made him lose a tooth. But according to my parents, I'm the one in the wrong, and now we have to help this girl who is carrying my brother's child and have to help support them. My brother then said he had no intention of being a father and told my girlfriend to get an abortion. She then ran out of town and I never saw her again. Don't know if she had the baby or aborted. All I know was that she was gone, and my folks were still praising my brother as the golden child. I was still the black sheep and failure as usual. Another year goes past, and me and my brother still despise each other, but I started dating again. It was a long while, but I found someone. Found a boy I liked. I'm bisexual, and this new guy Daniel I had met at college caught my eye. He was deaf, and I studied sign language out of boredom, so we got talking and things just seemed to click. We date, fall in love, bring him to my friend Isaac's party to introduce him to friends, and all feels great. At this point, the only one who knew I was bi was Isaac, but one day, walking into a cinema holding my boyfriend's hand, I bump into my evil twin. He points, laughs, and says some homophobic remarks. I tell him to go fuck himself, and I go see a movie with my arm around my boyfriend. When I got home, after dropping my boyfriend home, I knew I'd be facing something as I walked through the front door. I saw both my parents on the sofa, my mom crying about how on earth she could have given birth to someone so disgusting. Was it too much to hope she saw the light and was talking about my brother? But nope, she was talking about me and how I'm a stain on our family's name. My father gets up to yell at me, spout homophobic remarks and slurs. At this point, I see my brother up the staircase with a grin on his face. He then comes down and says he's uncomfortable with sharing a room with a gay, and my folks kicked me out there and then. With what little clothes and money I had, I went to Isaac's house, and his family took me in where I stayed for 6 months, actually experiencing familial love and affection, and Isaac's mother and stepdad I consider my own parents now. Eventually me, Daniel, and Isaac all get a 2-bedroom flat together, and all is good for the time being. So cut to December last year. Me and my boyfriend, now husband, Daniel, are married. Isaac was my best man. My sister and cousin Kai walked me down the aisle. I have a brilliant job in graphic design, have my own house by the sea, and life has never been better. However, I got a call from my sister that my brother was in hospital. I hadn't thought about him that much over the 9-year period since I was kicked out, but being reminded of his existence brought up a lot of painful memories for me. I was told by my sister that Sebastian wanted to see me and that it was urgent. So I went to the hospital he was in and met my sister outside the front entrance. I ask her what this is all about, but she doesn't tell me, and that I need to ask my twin. So I arrive to where my brother is, who have my parents at his side, and my folks actually look happy to see me, as if what they did to me hadn't happened, and Sebastian also looked really pleased to see me. It's safe to say, something was off. Eventually, I ask what's going on and why I was even here, to which my brother tells the family to leave us two alone. He looks so weak, as before he used to intimidate me so much. He told me he was dying from kidney failure and has been for the past few years, but now he didn't have long left. I knew immediately where this was going. He then said he always regretted that we never got along, at which point I told him, no. He looked confused and asked what I was on about, so I simply told him I wasn't going to donate my kidney to save him. He looked as if I just shit in his food. He then went on about how bad the situation was and that he was really sorry for all the things we did to each other growing up. Like, excuse me? We did to each other? I told him that I just wanted a brother growing up that cared and loved me who wouldn't try and break me every day for 18 years. He then called in our mom and dad and told them that I wasn't going to give up my kidney. They then started to spout off that I owe them for my existence and that I have a duty to look after family. I asked them where that duty was when they kicked me out of the house, or where that duty was every time my brother gave me a black eye, or their duty was to look after their grandchild when Sebastian decided he didn't want to be a father. I said for all the things he's done, from outing me to having an affair with my girlfriend and abandoning his child, that this was the universe's and my way of finally giving back what he dished out to bite him in the ass. I then turned around and walked out of the room, having that be the last time I ever saw Sebastian again. Not sure why they want a gay's kidney anyway. I walked past my sister who gave me a look. I gave her a look back, who then in turn gave me a look that said, I understand. After leaving the hospital, I felt as if a great weight had been taken off my shoulders. I went home and never looked back, pleased with my decision. Now last week, I get a call from my sister calling to inform me that Sebastian had died. She asked if I was okay and I said I was, that I didn't really feel anything in all honesty. She said she understood to a degree, as Sebastian hadn't been all that kind to her over the years either. I had my husband and Isaac there to support me. Honestly, at this point, Isaac might as well be our adopted child. Since his living with us today, I learned this whole situation with the world is over. The next day, I was getting calls and texts from my family members I hadn't spoke to in years, telling me that I was going to hell for being a bad son, being a bad brother, and for being a gay, and that me and my husband don't deserve children. Hubby and I have been looking into adoption and surrogacy. This makes me second guess my choice of not giving my brother my kidney. Even in death, he's making things harder for me. I did wonder if I was a bad person and if I made the wrong decision, but I knew that if I was in that position, I would have been left for dead. Screw him. It sounds like you've got a lot of struggles in your life, and I can't imagine how hard it must have been to go through all that alone. But I'm so glad you have support of your husband and Isaac along the way. What happened to your brother is awful, but I think it's good that he's not suffering anymore. It must have been really hard for your family to see him like that. Personally, I think you should have helped with the kidney, as you could have saved his life. No matter how much bad he's done to you in the past, I'm sure you would have seen a change in him if you had helped. However, I do understand that to you, this may have felt like revenge that needed to be taken. I'm glad you're doing well now and hope you stay away from your homophobic parents. Am I the jerk for giving my old, slightly damaged MacBook to my cat and not my sister? Okay, so I know this sounds a little ridiculous, so bear with me. Just last week, I purchased a new MacBook for myself. My old one lasted me 5 years and is still technically working, but due to some water damage, the speakers are completely messed up. The screen flickers quite a bit when not charging, and overall, it's just slow. I have no use for it anymore. Regarding my cat, so I live in a fairly small apartment, and although it has windows, there really isn't much to see besides a few trees in the parking lot, really. I got my cat a few months ago and have a cat tree by the window, shelves, and spaces so she can climb up high, and quite a few toys to play with. At first, my cat had no problem hanging by the window, but eventually I noticed she started to get bored, and while I'm in the middle of working, she would constantly meow or do mischievous things. I put on a cat TV a few times for her and know she really enjoyed it and would stare at it for hours. However, I would put this on my new TV as this was the only free screen I had. She would at times pounce on the TV, almost knocking it back. After I got my brand new laptop, I figured I'll barely get anything for selling my old one. I might as well use it for my cat. It works great. I put on Cat TV on YouTube and have the back of the laptop screen against the wall beside me. So while I'm working, she just sits there looking at the screen, occasionally pawing at it and then falling asleep. Of course, I still play with her and give her plenty of pets, but I found this is a great way to keep her mentally stimulated. This also prevents any concern of her damaging my electronics or hurting herself. I took a photo of her sitting and looking at the laptop because it looked like she was hard at work and thought it was funny and sent it to my family. My brother and mom laughed, but my sister messaged me. Sister, hey, you gave your MacBook to the cat? Me, yes. Mine was pretty banged up and I needed a new one, and this keeps her occupied. Sister, okay, well if you're no longer using it, can I have it? Me, well there really is no point considering there are so many issues with it. It's not like the cat owns it. I just use it for it to keep her occupied when I feel like she needs to see more than just the parking lot. Sister, so you're going to keep it for your cat rather than give it to me who needs it for school? MacBooks aren't cheap. Me, I'm aware they aren't cheap, but there are other companies. This basically went on for a bit until she said I was being an inconsiderate jerk. If the MacBook was in better condition, I would totally give it to her. But fixing the screen and speakers and replacing the battery will cost about the same or more as a mid-range Windows laptop. My mom and brother just kind of laughed at it and said not to worry, but my sister's being pretty cold with me. Am I being the jerk? I can understand where both you and your sister are coming from in this situation. You don't think the MacBook is in good enough quality for her to use for school, but she thinks that it's in too good a condition to waste it on a cat. She maybe doesn't understand that you actually get a good use out of it for the cat. But I have to agree, a MacBook may be a bit extra for a cat. You could buy any other brand that plays Cat TV for much cheaper. You should let your sister try it out for her schoolwork, and if the issues aren't too bad, then let her keep it and she could potentially pay you to buy another screen for your cat to use. Entitled sister-in-law stole our baby name. Now she regrets it. To cut to the chase, my wife and I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant before the wrong side of 35. We are currently 33 respectively now, and are blessed with a wonderful infant son. My wife has a younger half-sister that she has been in low contact with for some time. The woman is entitled and toxic, and also her mother's golden child. We refuse to let her or my mother-in-law in the house, since they both blatantly tried to steal my wife's jewelry box a couple of years ago. The box contained a lot of valuable jewelry inherited from my wife's grandmother. Said jewelry is now in a safety deposit box as per my suggestion. My wife and I had nearly given up trying to conceive when it suddenly happened and we were ecstatic. After we found out we were having a boy, we started looking into names. I ended up suggesting the name of my Scottish grandfather, and my wife loved it. So that's the name we settled on, but we made the mistake of posting about it on social media. Well, no surprise to the stereotype in this mess, my sister-in-law was pregnant too, and was months further along than my wife and also having a boy. She decided to claim my grandfather's name for her own son. And not just the first name, but the middle name too. We called her pissed over what she was doing, and she smugly told us there's nothing we can do about it, which she was kind of right about. There's nothing we could do about it legally, as it's still not a crime to steal planned baby names. We realized that drama was exactly what my sister-in-law wanted, and she thought that by taking the name for herself, we'd not be able to use it. I laughed and told her that while what she did was dirty and underhanded, we would keep our chosen name, and she could just deal with it whether she decides to go through with copying us or not. Well, my sister-in-law's baby daddy called me and said it was an unreasonable don for still wanting to use the name after sister-in-law claimed it. I said she claimed nothing, and since we couldn't own the name, then neither could they. Before he ended the call, he threatened me by saying I'd be sorry if we didn't change the name. Then he hung up before I could respond. Months later, sister-in-law has a healthy baby boy and names him my grandfather's name. We did not show up for the birth, both because of the pandemic and because we simply didn't care to be there. Sister-in-law called us wanting congratulations, but we told her we simply didn't care, and that if she was still insisting we change our baby's name, then she'd be in for some big disappointment because we were not. Sister-in-law demanded I put my wife on the phone, but it was already on speaker and my wife spoke up, and she said she agrees with me entirely. We weren't changing the name. She hung up on us, but soon started sending emails with text walls of names, even suggesting similar ones. I responded back that the name was from my grandfather, and that's why we were not changing it. She shut up and we didn't hear from her again till our own son was born. 2 months later, we were blessed with our son. He came out perfect and we named him just as we intended. Well, no surprise, my sister-in-law called us a few days after the birth to scream in our ears that we copied her son's name. I pointed out she was the real copycat since she had no familial ties to the name, and we did. Anyone who looks at our family trees could see that. Then my wife spoke and said that after the attempted theft of her grandmother's jewelry, she no longer considered sister-in-law her sister and would have nothing to do with her nephew either. For months, we were bombarded with messages and emails from my wife's side of the family. Half were on our side after finding out the whole story. The other half were not. Sister-in-law's baby daddy, true to his word, showed up at my door to make me sorry. I'm not sure what his plan was, but I pretty much towered over him. I'm well built from regular exercise and 3 trips to the gym a week, whereas he, on the other hand, was very skinny and about 5'6" with a baby face that was badly hidden in a slim beard. I told him my house has cameras and to get off my property and never come back. He just yelled a few obscenities at me and drove off in his beat-up old car. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law called us from a different number to yell at me for making sister-in-law's baby daddy feel emasculated. I didn't even threaten the man, just told him to leave and not come back. If he didn't want to feel emasculated, then he shouldn't have come knocking. Then they tried to bring up the issue of the baby name again and demanded we change our son's name as he's so young, so there's still plenty of time to do it. We held our ground and told them that they were bonkers to still think they were in the right after they copied our choice of name just to try and get one over on us. I said my sister-in-law didn't even name her son out of love, but out of spite, just to try and stick it to my wife for no good reason. Then my wife called them both out on the way she was treated growing up, how entitled sister-in-law and mother-in-law have always been, and how she was glad to leave them far behind and she wants nothing from them, and they won't have anything from us. That left sister-in-law sobbing and mother-in-law called me a royal bastard before hanging up the phone. There was no contact again for a little while, till sister-in-law called us again sometime later to bitterly tell us we'd won. She and her baby daddy got in a huge fight and he left. He was apparently very sore that sister-in-law didn't let him even give the son a middle name from his family, and he said he was sick of the bullshit and wanted his son named after him and not some guy he wasn't even related to. Sister-in-law finally caved and they got the boy's birth certificate reissued with a completely new name, which cost sister-in-law around $500, or so she claims. Sister-in-law then demanded we at least compensate her for the name change, plus another $100 for the emotional damage, as now she's going to have to get used to calling her son by a different name. We laughed and said this would have never happened if she hadn't stole our baby name to begin with, and we didn't owe her anything. Since then, we've been in no contact with sister-in-law and mother-in-law, but my father-in-law, who's a very nice man and divorced from mother-in-law for obvious reasons, would come by often and loves his grandson. From what he and other relatives told us, the situation between sister-in-law and her baby daddy was pretty tumultuous. But we don't care. Not our monkeys, not our circus. Your mother and sister-in-law sound like some entitled jerks. You should have fully cut contact with them as soon as they tried to steal from their own family. One lesson you can maybe take from all this is to keep special things like your baby names of choice private and not post on social media to avoid something like this happening again. This said, you couldn't have expected someone would be so ridiculous to steal your chosen name. I love the fact that you stuck to your guts and didn't cave in and let them keep the name just because their baby was born first. I'm also glad that you and your wife are now in no contact with your in-laws and living happily with a beautiful baby added to the family. Am I the jerk for wanting to abandon my kids? I, 25-year-old male, am the caretaker, but not the legal guardian to my brother, who is 16, and sister, who is 14. They are practically my kids. When I was 16, our dad died, and him dying caused my mom to become mentally unstable, and she turned to drugs and alcohol. We became homeless, living in motels and random guys' houses. My mom didn't care. When I finally turned 18, I got my own place and brought them along. We were in a better place, but it was also really tough. My mom provided nothing. I worked a full-time job along with odd jobs to make sure we had a home and food. In essence, I became their mom and they were my kids. For a long time, we only had each other. My mom drifted from state to state. She only reached out when she wanted money or a place to sleep. 10 years later and she has a job and is mostly sober. She has a nice condo and recently got a brand new Mercedes. The way she got these things are not because she worked really hard at her job, if you get what I mean. Even with all her shiny new stuff, she doesn't give me any money. No child support, nothing. If my siblings ask for money, she cash apps them, but as for giving me child support, nope. Again, I'm not their guardian, so I tried to get money from her in court. I didn't want like CPS to get involved and have them taken away. Anyway, I recently got engaged. We've been talking about living arrangements. My fiancé owns his house while I rent, so for obvious reasons, I would live with him. The problem is that it's about an hour away and it's kind of small for the four of us. Not only that, but my brother loves his school and doesn't want to switch. I imagine my sister feels the same way. My fiancé has offered reasonable accommodations. We could make it work and still have them attend their school, but in all honesty, I don't care. I don't want to be their mom anymore. I want my mom to take them and figure out new living arrangements. I spent nearly a decade caring for them. I don't want to do it anymore. I scrimped and saved every cent and nearly lost my mind doing so. Even worse, my goddamn hair turned gray thanks to the stress of it all. I'm kidding, but in all seriousness, I'm done. I want to go play house with my soon-to-be husband and maybe have some tiny humans of my own. I told my maternal grandma this and she was irate. Told me that I was just like my mom for trying to abandon them. She doesn't trust my mom and for good reason. This lifestyle she has probably won't last. My siblings are at an extremely high risk of being homeless again. It scares the hell out of me. It makes me sad too. I love them so much. I know it doesn't sound like it, but I really do. And my sister does not want to go back to my mom. I'm kind of all she knows. But to say I'm tired and resentful is an understatement. I'm not their mom. That's it. Full stop. I told my grandmother this and she said I was a jerk. So here I am. Am I a jerk for wanting to abandon my siblings? You sound like a really good person and an amazing older sister to have. I'm sorry you're going through this. You're right that your mom is a bad parent and you should do whatever you can to keep your younger siblings away from her, even if that costs you some freedom. You have done an amazing job of bringing them up so far. If you send them off to someone else now, you risk ruining the bond you have built with them. At the same time, it is very unfair on you having to sacrifice so much to mother them. I think you should also talk to your grandmother about how she can help out with the kids. You've already been doing everything for them, and it sounds like they need someone besides their mom to care for them. This should also give you more time without them to enjoy your relationship with your husband. My sister demanded we share my daughter. A little backstory. My sister and I had to share everything as kids. Not to mention I was forced to be her and our younger brother's second mother. But I'll save that for another day. For some of my childhood, I was happy to share things with my sister. Sweets, snacks, toys, the normal kid things. There's 4 years between us. I'm the oldest, and as you can probably guess, when I reached my teen years, I wanted my own things and spend time alone. No. She wanted me to do everything with her. I could barely spend 10 minutes in the bathroom before she would start banging on the door. Unfortunately, when I was around 15, my siblings and I were taken into foster care. We were separated from our brother, which was difficult for both of us, and for a while, I didn't mind my sister wanting to spend all her time with me. Shortly after my 16th birthday, I wanted to have my own space and things are, well, mine. She would argue with me over not sharing stuff, and of course, typical sibling fights and yelling happen almost every other day. We sort of grew out of our sibling squabbles over the years, but she kind of developed a "the world owes me" attitude, which drove me crazy. I did my best to hold in my frustrations, but I'm human, and sometimes I kind of snapped. A couple years after my daughter was born, my sister and I weren't really talking much because of her selfish attitude towards me that I spend most of my time and income on my daughter. During one of the times we were on good terms, she was over for the weekend and everything was okay. Until a conversation led her to telling me that she was going to take my daughter for a week because she wanted to spend time with her because it was her turn. I said, not gonna happen. She is my daughter, not a doll or pet we share. She gets mad and starts yelling. I told her to leave and she argues how she had parental rights and social services will force me to allow her to take my daughter whenever she wants. I laughed, told her to get out and don't come back. Honestly, I don't know if she seriously thought that it was her right to have my daughter. It seems like you and your sister have been through a lot during your childhood, and this could be why your sister has the attitude she has. But this doesn't make it okay. You need to have a talk with her and try to help her mature. Her thinking she has a right to take your daughter for a week without you is absolutely ridiculous. The only reason I could see her demanding something like this is maybe she is lonely at the moment and just wants some company. It might be a good idea to invite her around more often. Entitled relatives think they deserve more than my adopted son. To give some context here, I must say that I'm an IT engineer with toxic family relationships. I did cut off my father, my uncles, and aunts, yet I keep in contact with my cousins and their children, which somehow I treat as mine, as I had none and I'm an only child. Therefore is the closest I got. I always prioritize success over relationships, so I'm single, and through the years I felt that my cousins' children weren't mine, therefore I want to raise one of my own. It took me some time, but finally, I adopted an 8-year-old kid, as those usually age out of foster care. I love the experience of raising a kid, yet I have to deal with some of the entitledness from my cousins. It turns out that every now and then, I usually spend some money traveling with my cousins and their children. Yet this year, for obvious reasons, I needed to save money in order to get all the stuff my son would need, and I'm planning on going big, the best of the best I could afford. I just explained this to my cousins and told them that this year our trip together will be canceled. They said nothing, so I thought they understood the whole situation. Anyway, I wanted my kid to socialize with my cousin's children, so I invite them all to a get-together party, after about 2 months when my son felt comfortable enough. And somehow, all the kids were so mad and refused to play with my kid. He just sat in the corner and tried not to cry, but he did. I talked with the kids and they said he was not part of the family and they deserved more, as he is adopted and they, as my family, were entitled to the trip to the parks in Florida. I was in shock and asked them where they got that from, and they told me how their parents have told them the reason why I took their trip was my son, who comes from the streets and isn't even family. I was fuming, so I told them all to leave. I had a Zoom meeting with just my cousins who tell me that their children must come first, and I told them they made me realize my son comes first, so I canceled their college funds, their private school tuitions, and just told them that if my kid is not part of their family, neither am I, and they were cut off. I've been called unreasonable, but I think my son comes first, and I made the right decision. I know this is off topic, but I just want to let you know that the reason your cousin's kids acted that way is because they are very young and are still developing their sense of morality. This is where your cousin should come in. It's the parents' job to guide them in the right direction and teach them how to treat others with respect. It's so sad to see that their parents didn't teach them how to be good people. I hope your son has a great life, as from what I've read, you make a great father. Best of luck to both of you. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.